RFH, how are you?
Hi, good.
So, what is going on? I follow you on Twitter. I saw that these pictures of this. I saw the pictures of you on the horse, not knowing it was you. I had seen your
Oh, yeah.
old pictures.
The
There was these pictures with you in a beanie, right? That was the one making the rounds first, right?
yeah, that's AI.
Oh,
So,
that's AI.
yes, that's an AI photo someone made, some fan art, I guess.
So that person must have had your. They must have had your picture before that, right? So that was a fan who knew you were.
No, it there was a photo of me going around from Clubhouse. It's quite blurry and there's like a filter on it, so I look pretty Chinese like in
Uh-huh.
it. So, yeah, that's basically what happened there. Sorry, my
But
phone is slipping.
but you look Chinese now.
You think I look Chinese?
Is that a joke? I thought you had Mongolian blood.
No, I'm not Chinese.
But you understand why people would think that, right?
I'm a white person with hooded eyes.
You have, yeah, very high
Yeah.
cheekbones.
Yes, I have high
Hooded.
cheekbones and hooded eyes.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm surprised. So there's no Mongoloid, not even Russian or anything that could Finnish or anything that could plausibly be connected.
Well, I have Amerindian ancestry, so maybe that
Uh,
is why. Maybe
uh-huh.
I'm a little Latina in a way.
Yeah,
So,
that'll do it. Yeah.
yeah. So maybe that's why the eyes look a little that way. But white people do have hooded eyes too, so it happens.
Uh-huh. Like I
Yeah.
usually, yeah, the Finns sometimes have it, but it's often because there is actually Asian ancestry.
Right,
What
because
white
they have some Siberian ancestry, and I guess in a way I do too. So
are there famous white people who have Asian looking eyes?
I like Renee Zellweger, who's also Sammy. So
Renee Zellweger.
yeah,
Asian
she's
looking
Sam.
eyes, really? Okay.
Elon looks Chinese. Another
Uh,
one. Yeah,
Putin sort of looks like a
Putin looks
chick.
Chinese. Yeah.
Yeah. There was another one. Well, didn't Brezhnev kind of look like an Asian? Let me try to look at Brezhnev again.
Barry, how do you say his name? He is one of those. A
Oh
lot of
yeah.
people, yeah, the Irish actor. A lot of people from the British Isles kind of have those eyes too. So it's like a Scandinavian British Isles thing that
Uh-huh.
it's an archetype of person that exists, or they look a little Asian. So I guess I also kind of have that.
Yeah. Well, white with a hint of Asian is actually a good look. That's why the Asians are always dyeing their hair blonde. It's actually a
Mhm.
nut or red or like this reddish hair because it's
Mhm.
actually a good combination. And so
Yeah.
what happened with you recently? You or like what is did someone dox you? Did you self dox? Like just explain to me what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, people were already doing it. They found an old video of me at a Bernie rally where I'm harassing them and
You were harassing men?
no, not men, harassing them as in like Bernie Sanders supporters in Columbus, Ohio. So,
Ah. And this was like was this 2016 or earlier?
yes, this was like 10 years ago when I was in college. So,
Uh-huh. And what kind of stuff were you saying to them to harass them?
I was so it was like Milo Yiannopoulos' idea. My friend was working for him at the time as like one of his many assistants,
Mm.
and we like brought him to campus to come speak, and then he's like, "Oh, you guys should do this video where you ask donations for Donald Trump's wall at the Bernie Sanders rally." And we went to Michigan, and
Uh,
so we went down to Columbus to like make it even more antagonistic because we had on our Michigan gear, and that's a very,
mm.
big rivalry in college football. So yeah, we just kinda went down there to not harass, kinda it's just the typical, like, street interview thing, like, "Oh, you're a libtard," you know?
Yeah, I remember this 2016
Yeah.
thing. It was like easy to kind of, and it was like kind of new, just like talking to people and like putting the
Yeah.
video on the internet. And there's all these kind of, it's like a time warp. It would be like, you just be provocative, go
Yes.
talk to people. It got violent. Or like, was it ever, like, when did it get violent? Like, was things violent yet in like 2016? Or like, when did like Antifa pop up and like make it actually hard to have
No, this
events
was
for
this was
makers?
still early. This was still early. So this was when people were still thinking, like, Donald Trump's running as, like, a joke.
Mhm.
Um, and I was one of the few people, I guess, who was already fully on board from the beginning. So, yeah, this is pretty early on.
Yeah, I mean, I was too. I remember these circles. I went to that, like, Twinks
Twinks,
for Trump.
Twinks for
Uh, yeah, were you there?
No, is this something Milo did? That sounds
Yeah,
right.
it was at the
Yeah.
RNC. It was
Yeah,
at the
I remember
RNC.
this. I
I
did
think
not go to the
Richard
RNC, so
I think our good friend Richard Spencer, I think he got kicked out. I had seen
wait,
him during the
he showed up to
RNC.
the Twinks for Trump?
I think so. I think this was reported in the media. But I remember this. Yeah, and they were like, "Oh, this guy's a little bit too dangerous," and it was like Gert Wilders. We were like, "Oh, this guy, this
Yeah,
European guy." So like,
Carriage
we
was
were
there. I remember that. He, like, went to the RNC.
and we were like, it was like it was like so easy to make us laugh because like now, like, okay, there's a twink or there's a tranny who likes Trump, big deal. Like
Yeah,
there's like 10 lady magas, like maga trannies, like
yeah,
all over Twitter.
a
And
lot of
then back
MAGA
then it
trainings.
was like, yeah, all you had to do was like get some gays and be like, we support Trump, and everyone would be like, ha ha ha, that's
Yeah,
so that's
very
so
of the
original.
time. Yeah, very Milo. But yeah, a lot of people, I guess people, like, recognized, they could tell it was me because, again, like, I've been involved in politics, for a long time, like, online, so some people just put it together that that was me, and they knew of that video, which had mostly been, like, scrubbed because my friend, just decided to live, like, a normal life and, didn't wanna be involved in politics anymore, so he took that video down a long time ago. But I guess someone had archived it and someone found it and was just posting it everywhere as this gotcha. And I'm like, well, I don't know why this is supposed to be a surprise. I've been very open about the fact that I was very much a conservative.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had, like, my name and stuff and just kept posting photos. So I was like, whatever. They already have it. So who cares anymore?
Yeah, and you were never, like, part of an organization? You were just, like, a college kid going around, like, annoying Bernie
Yeah.
supporters?
Yeah. I was just a college kid being obnoxious. I was like 21 and I thought this was really funny, and I like to
Yeah.
troll people, and I guess I still kinda do, but in a different sort of way. Yeah, I mean, I was part of Students for Trump, I guess, that's an
Mm.
organization. I was in College Republicans, things like this, but, yeah, I was pretty heavily involved back then, so
And did you have that internalized misogyny that women on the right often have back then?
yeah, very badly. Very badly. I had some very bad mommy issues. I was very much like, I'm an anti-feminist and all this, and yeah, I used to say some things that are very, very opposite of what I say now. So it's pretty
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, and what changed you? Was it an experience, or was it just thinking about things, or what?
Keep having to deal with men on the right, to be honest, over the years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. I get
Yeah.
it, they are not
I just
I
I used to think it was, like, funny, and it was kinda like, "Ha ha, yeah, like, we're misogynists." I don't know, I guess I had to really, like, live out the consequences of these ideas, and I was like, "Oh, it's actually not kind of this abstract funny thing, it's pretty real, and it has real world implications that, are not good for me, and not good for other women." So, yeah, I just kinda grew up a bit. I mean, I was, like I said, I was very young at the time, so
Yeah, and I was, I had this misogyny.
yeah.
I've been working through it. I have a friend who reminds me of things I was saying like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's just like it's kind of become normalized. It's like the base stuff, like, it's just so normalized. "Oh, women
Yeah,
shouldn't vote, women this, women that." And when you're in the group chats, like, you realize that it's, like, not just women, it's like they have to show their base on every issue. And I think, like, just kind of seeing like how kind of stupid like men can be, like the Trump movement, I see as like what they say about women. It's like not, it's not rational. It's like emotional. It's like about, just kind of how you feel in the moment. Like, these
yeah,
people are like anti-facts. They're anti-logic,
yeah,
and they're just kind of replacing women's feelings with their own kind of feelings of inadequacy, and it's like pathetic because they're like men. They're supposed to be something else,
Yeah.
and yeah, the kind of just seeing what kind of men can be like just turned me against the misogyny.
Yeah, and it is, like, quite against, like, kind of the Western tradition in many ways too, I realize. It's very, like, third worldist, and that was a big part of why I kinda just started to get the ick from all of it. I was like,
Yeah,
I do like Western, civilization and society, I think we do things better, and they're actually quite rejecting that. They're actually pretty subversive in many ways. So, um,
yeah, yeah. They're Arabs or they're like
yeah,
Afghans.
yeah. They
They,
and you could they you know that they kinda worship this stuff because, the whole, like, white Sharia thing became, like, a meme, and then they love men like Tate, and,
yeah,
they really do, and they have, like, this envy of Arab men and Islam, and it becomes, like, this kind of joke, but not joke, where they kinda, like, wanna convert to Islam or
yeah,
at least, like, have this respect for it, purely because they're mean to the women, not because anything to do with the theology or because they think that, like, Allah is, like, a better, idea of God or whatever. It's nothing to do with that. It's purely just, well, they get to slap their women around, so I wanna reject the Western tradition entirely and kind of adopt
yeah.
this stuff.
Yeah, so the alt-right started as like, the kind of the balance between racism and misogyny changed
Yeah,
over time.
it
So
did.
it in the early days, it was like pure racism, and you could be like, quote unquote misogynistic, like I don't know, you would be against feminism or
Yeah.
like affirmative action for women or something, just normal kind of normie conservative kind of
Mhm.
ideas. But basically, like one of the cases was like whites built better civilizations. They have individual rights. They have women's rights. That's why Geert Wilders in that Twinks for Trump thing. That was like part of the joke. That was the Milo Yiannopoulos thing, where he's like, "Ha
Yeah.
ha ha! Look, we're the true lovers of gay rights and women, and the Muslims threaten this, and to a lesser extent, I guess other non-white races." And then over time, it kind of became, I think it became more, when it became more kind of mainstreamed, when like the circle of like alt-right people, because it started off with like a bunch of intellectuals and some of them, had their lives together and were kind of
Mhm.
normal. But then I think it eventually, with the success of Trump, the rise of like Groyperism, it became incel dominated. And the incels were, they didn't care as much about race sometimes, and they were
Yeah.
often of non-white background. They were often,
Yeah.
Mexican or Indian or something. Uh, and then they brought this like anger towards women, and then it became like, oh, maybe Islam is not so bad. Maybe
Yeah.
we need to live like medieval peasants or whatever. And it's just a kind of, this kind of modernism, and it became like less racist, but
It
became
did.
more hateful towards women and stupid.
They really abandoned the racialist aspect of the whole movement, weirdly enough, because it was so racist in its foundations. But they entirely abandoned that for misogyny and like kind of global brotherhood over, like a racial identity. It's really fascinating, but that you definitely saw that happen with the kind of more like alternative right. Um, yeah, it was an interesting trend, but I guess, reproduction is just, like, more fundamental and it's more,
Yeah.
uh, anxiety for men, so it kinda makes sense, that it happened that way.
Yeah, that's a good point, because kind of like your status with women is kind of more fundamental to your identity than your
Yeah,
race is. Like race is like kind of fundamental, right? If you're in prison or something, you're gonna care about your race, and you might, you join a gang and you fight the other gangs, and like friendships and families are obviously, there's racial components to that. But then, like, if people aren't from a completely foreign culture, if they come to America and they, usually assimilate, like some men are going to do fine with women. They're going to be attractive to them, and some men are not. And like, if you're a man who like really sucks with women, it's like hard for that not to become your full
yeah,
identity.
obsession. Yeah,
Because you're
yeah,
just a failure. That's like the entire, like your genes and your
purpose,
body are
yeah,
telling you this is what you're here for, and
yeah,
that's not like exactly what you're saying. You're not sitting there thinking about your genes. You're thinking about how horny you are and kind of
right,
how rejected you are by women. It's kind of not even it's partly the sex, but it's also just the lower status that reflects.
mhm,
And then that becomes like a political movement. Like that is powerful. I look at this incel community Twitter account, and it's horrifying. They're sitting there and they're not only like self-defeating losers, whoever runs that account, maybe it's a single person, but they're also like angry at anyone who does anything to like try to better themselves. So they're
Yeah.
mad at like somebody who dated outside their race. They're mad at this, they're mad at that, and it's like you just are upset at anyone who just doesn't sit around and just indulge in being a loser. It's pathetic.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Um, it's and I kind of get it though. Like it really is just so foundational, like, to your being is to reproduce. And so as a man, if you can't get women, it really will just consume you entirely. And
Mhm.
these other political issues don't really matter at the end of the day if you can't access
Yeah.
sex. So they
Let,
yeah, they
let,
really abandoned everything in favor of misogyny. So and it in a way is rational, but
let
um
me let me ask you this. So my view has always been that like the incel stuff is self-defeating. They say it's hopeless, but I when I grew up there was the pickup stuff, and that was kind of like maybe overly optimistic. They would tell you that any man could become, like James Bond or something.
mhm.
But I still think that is like a healthier attitude than the incel stuff. I do think men can usually improve and usually get better with women. Where do you come down on this kind of how hopeless it is for some of these men?
I think the majority of them can be helped. There is a certain percentage, and I've tweeted about this before, I think that is just kind of hopeless, and that has always existed though,
Yeah.
in the population. That's like not anything new. Um, and we had kind of more, I guess, alternatives for this in the sense that like excess males kind of died
Mhm.
off, in more violent and unstable
You
times.
real that's the Hitler part.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's just human history. They were kind of killed off. So this was kind of dealt with in a sense. And now we have a much more stable, resource-rich society with a lot less violence. And there's a lot of excess males around. And unfortunately, some of them will never be able to reproduce. It's also, because I was also talking this the other day, it's in Northern Europe, the marriage pattern like this has existed for a long time. I think this like emerged in the Middle Ages. Something
Mhm,
like 25% of women never reproduced, meaning, similar percentage of men never did. Cat ladies are a part of Western tradition.
mhm.
They are. That's kind of how it's always been for us. Cat ladies in late marriage. So I think we're just kind of returning to that. And the 50s were this weird time where we had this sort of like pussy socialism. Um, this was such a flat time hierarchy because America was really the only power left standing. So there was just all
Pussy
this.
socialism. I like
Yeah, it was. It was quite the 50s were a pretty socialist time in America.
Yeah, but
Um,
America, I think this is a Western thing that goes back. I mean, I think this goes back to monogamy and Christianity, right? Some people
Mhm.
didn't reproduce, but
Yeah.
just by mathematical logic, if some people, if people are only allowed to have one wife at a time, then it's going to be the number of women getting married is going to have to be the same as the men get married. So I think this is just a uniquely Western thing where you do have marriage and monogamy is kind of the norm. I don't think it was the 1950s might have been unique in other ways, but I don't think that's the distinguishing feature of the
Well,
1950s.
it's that almost everyone got to do this. Everyone was kind of guaranteed
Yeah,
a
it was like
wife.
so socialistic, right?
And
Yeah,
like
like everyone got to
yes,
survive.
and like three kids,
Yeah.
and you could support them on the one job. It was. That was a weird aberration in our history that people are really crying out for and they think is the norm, but it wasn't. And a lot of the boomer hate is just the fact that they really got to be the ones to experience that this time in our history, and no one else really is getting it. But no one before them really did either. So the
Yeah,
boomers just kind of
yeah,
lucked out, and I think we gotta chill on them a little bit. I get that they're annoying, but
yeah.
they were just born at the right time. And we're just kind of returning to how things used to be.
Mm. Yeah. So anyways, what I was trying to get to what is the so like what was kind of so you were you were being doxxed, people were face doxing you, and did you just wake up one day and you just said, "I'm going to give them the real pictures and shut all these people up"?
I mean, I kind of knew this year that that was going to happen, that I was going to do this. I just kind of was waiting for the time to feel exactly right, and I just
Mm,
that's kind of how I work. It's just I get like a feeling, and I'll be like, all right, I'll do it
mm,
today. So there was like a plan, but it was also like the day of was just kind of impulsive, I guess.
mhm. And what's and like the responses you're getting, are they coping? Are they coping hard? Because they wanted you to be horrendous. They really wanted you to be this fat, kind of
Yeah,
pig-like creature, and they can try. They can try to say that,
yeah.
but are they putting effort in? Are they still arguing you're ugly?
I mean, I think they were initially. They're trying to say I'm, a four or something, but whatever. They can have their opinion on that. I go outside.
Uh-huh.
I've never had trouble dating. I'm quite comfortable with how I look, you guys. Like, I get that a lot of women have very low self-esteem in this
Yeah.
regard, and are that will send them into a spiral. But it's just not going to work on me. I've been online for
Mm,
like 10 years, and I also have like a life separate outside of this. So I just, yeah, you're just not going to gaslight me.
I
I
love it.
I do fine.
I love it. I love the not caring. I mean, you could
Yeah.
tell. You could tell that I see people, and sometimes you've seen the meme where it's like the mask, where you put on like the mask, and they're crying
Mhm.
behind it in the mask. Like you could tell that sometimes people really are upset.
Yeah.
With you, I've never got that impression. I've never got the impression that you were actually you were actually ever hurt. I see the nonchalance as like completely genuine. Were you always like this? Did you always kind of not care what people thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do have a little bit of the tism or something. I've
Mm,
just kind of always been that way as a kid. Maybe it's just like I'm an only child, and I don't know. I didn't have like siblings to tell me to shut the fuck up more and try to humble me, and I was a little spoiled or something. But
mm,
um, and my family is like German and English, and they're just kind of spurgy in this way. But yeah, I don't know. I think I've just kind of been that way since a kid, since I was a kid.
mhm. Do they ever? I mean, does people ever like try to find you in real life? I've known women online who get real stalkers who try to find them in real life. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been some people who are trying to post my addresses and such. Luckily, it's all old.
Mm.
It's stuff from again like 10 years ago. Uh, but yeah, it's always
That's
gonna
the
be
word.
the
They just
same.
post your. I mean, because I get that too. They just post your address. Nobody ever like has tried to confront you or like. Have you ever gotten a phone call or anything like that?
No. Mm-mm.
Wow, I get harassed more than you. And I
Yeah.
get harassed less than a lot of people do. They really do go for